The original OE cam sensor design kept the small magnet in the middle of the unit exposed. Unfortunately, those magnets frequently break loose from the housing like this one did and falls into and destroys the synchronizer. The cam sensor is expensive enough, but replacing the synchronizer and the sensor is a much costlier repair. So why did the magnet break loose? There's a shutter wheel or interrupter that rotates around the magnet and activates and deactivates the sensor by blocking the magnetic field between the Hall effect sensor and the magnet. This on-off magnetic attraction ultimately causes the magnet to break loose from the original component. Our design advantage is easy to see. Our engineers use a 500-pound shear strength adhesive to secure the magnet in place. They also completely encapsulated the magnet in this plastic housing, forever eliminating any possibility of magnet loss failure. Think about it. This improvement over OE, engineered and manufactured right here in the USA, makes it sensible to replace the cam sensor before the original destroys the synchronizer. Remember, we've never had a failure. None. Zero. Problem solved. Another Wells advantage.
Hey, welcome to another live Wells Tech training event. We are so happy you are here. Today, we're going to talk about TPMS.
Yeah.
That's what it says right here. What does that mean?
Tire pressure monitoring systems.
Tire pressure monitoring systems.
Yep.
Been around since 07, 08?
Yeah, somewhere in there. They were federally mandated around 2008, but we had seen them in the early 2000s before that.
A little bit different system.
Right,
than what they have today. The real early ones, the real early trials of this, so to speak, we're working off the ABS system.
Right,
virtually.
yeah, it was monitoring the wheel speed.
The wheel speed, and the faster the wheel speed, the smaller the wheel.
Exactly.
Right? So if the wheel is smaller, it has lost air.
Yep.
Theoretically.
Yeah, unless somebody put the wrong tires on.
Yeah, or something. There's a lot of different anomalies that can happen there, so you can see why they've advanced to something like this.
Yeah, real pressure sensors.
Yes,
yeah.
real pressure sensors. Great system. I love the idea.
Yeah.
I can see in the future, or even today, there are people that aren't going to have the repairs done just because they're too costly.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them. You know, we've been living without it for this long.
Right.
But if it was my daughter's car or my granddaughter's car or my wife's car, I'd fix it.
Yeah, and in the age of fuel economy watching now,
and that too.
You wouldn't notice just by looking at a tire that it's down 3 or 4 psi.
Right.
This sensor might notice.
Yeah, especially low profile tires. It's pretty tough to see.
It affects fuel economy.
Yep.
And
so
integrity of the tire.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not absolutely necessary, but it's a very good thing. And so anyways, that's my viewpoint.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. But before we get started with TPMS, yes, we have to talk about this. The coveted Wells Tech t-shirt giveaway. And yes, we do have larger sizes in this. This one is we got sizes for your whole family. And the whole idea is here, you know, you can win more than one shirt. We don't care how many shirts you win, right? So if you're sick of, if your closet is full of Wells Tech t-shirts that only fit you, why don't you put your whole family in there? And then when you do that, by the way, when you win one of these shirts, send me a selfie, and we'll get that up on our website. We appreciate that. And once you win one of these shirts, you are christened into the Wells Tech family.
All right.
You are one of us.
Cool.
That's how it goes. All right? So there you go. All right, here's the question. And if you were watching last time, you have absolutely no problem with this question. What does this symbol mean? Right here. This symbol right there. What does that mean? Okay, first one in who chats in the correct answer will win a t-shirt, and we'll get one out tomorrow for you. All right, there you go. TPMS.
Yeah.
Where would you like to begin?
Well, let's start off with how the system works. How
Let's
it
take a look.
functions.
Let's just take a look at a rough TPS system.
Yeah,
And
so-
I see your cars here.
Yeah, that's my sports car right there.
Nice.
So you can see it coming up on the screen now. We got our TPMS sensors, one in each wheel, four total on a four-wheel car.
Right, yeah.
So it's got a sensor in each wheel. They talk to the receiving module via radio frequency.
Okay.
And that receiving module isn't always going to be called a receiving module. That's got multiple names depending on whatever company the sensors are on.
We didn't have enough room there for all the different names, so we
Right,
called it
yeah.
a receiving module. Wherever these sensors are sending the signal and receiving that and calculating it,
Right.
that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Could be your PCM, right?
Exactly. Or the door lock actuator module or whatever.
Right, your fob.
So then that receiving module then sends our data up to our dash there so we can see that we have a low tire light on.
Right. Very good. And, you know, they don't always tell you which tire, right?
Yep.
Some do, some don't. Some say you got a low tire. We know which one, but we ain't telling you. You got to go out there and look.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
For whatever reason they do that, I don't know. But
Yeah, every system's
it is what it is. Okay, very good. Very good. Now that we have a little bit of a, you know, better understanding of how the system works,
Right.
let's take a look at what's inside one of those sensors.
Okay.
Okay, you know, what is in here? What makes it work? You know, they always are potted up like this, and you can't
Right.
see what's inside. So let's take a look. Let's see what's inside. Graphics 1. Okay, there it is. All right, now you have this is a unpotted view
Right,
of a pressure
exactly.
sensor.
Yep.
Typical. It is really nobody's pressure sensor. It is just
This is usually how they're built.
yeah, just a generic pressure sensor. So you have a 7 to 12 year battery in it,
Yep.
right? And we also have a pressure sensor. And this, if you want to think of this as the opposite of a map sensor.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's looking at pressure, it's not looking at vacuum.
Okay.
Okay, more like a barometric pressure sensor.
Right.
Okay. And it's a strain gauge if you really want to look
Okay.
into it. And an MCU, so we have to have some sort of brains,
Right.
right? And a low frequency coil. And we also have a transmitting crystal.
Okay.
And that's what sends a radio signal out that gets picked up by the receiving module.
Right.
Okay, and what in that radio signal you also have the identification of that sensor.
Yep.
You know, and there's a bunch of different things that can be in there.
Exactly.
A lot of different information could be in there, and we're going to take a look at that in a minute. Okay, great. You want to take that down? Excellent, wonderful. Okay.
Oh, and actually, before we go on, just real
Sure.
quick, the sensors like this they're all potted up, like you had said before, so they're not able to be changed. The batteries aren't able to
Oh
be
yeah,
changed.
right. Yeah, it's
Just
not
so
like
that's
your
a good-
watch or anything.
Right.
You know, take it into the watchman's.
Right. Yep. That's why they're 7 to 12 year batteries, and the sensors end up failing at that
Right.
point. And need to be
Eventually,
changed out.
eventually they're going to fail.
Yep.
It's going to happen.
It's
And
life of a
you know,
battery.
I've seen them go much longer than 12
Mm-hmm.
years. You know, so we really don't know, and I don't know if there's really a rhyme or a reason as to which ones wear out first. I don't know. I don't know. But anyways, that's what happens. Eventually, they are going to wear out. Okay. Okay. We looked at the sensor.
Yeah.
What do we? Now you have to have some sort of tool to work on that, right?
Right. Yeah. If we have
Okay.
a failed sensor or we have to relearn location, we need a tool to do it.
And it isn't just our scan tool.
Right.
Our scan tool is not going to do what we need it to do.
Right. It's a separate
Typically.
standalone, usually a standalone.
You can buy a scan tool, and can you buy a scan tool and a tire monitor
Usually
together?
they have a little dongle that would attach.
I thought
to
they
it.
had some sort of tool there where you can actually attach it together. This one is a standalone.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a tool we're going to use right here. So it's called a programmer, TPMS programmer. You want to bring that up? Let's take a look at that. Okay, perfect. You want to go through that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So at the top of our programmer there, we have our sensor cradle. That's where we put the new sensor in to be programmed. We got our antennas, one on each side, right in the about middle there, with a LCD screen in the center. And then we got our control pad buttons down here at the bottom. On the bottom here, we have a USB port and a jack for plugging it in to
Yeah.
charge up the battery that's inside
So
here.
it's all wireless.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you
yep.
don't have to have it plugged in the wall.
Yep.
It's got its own battery and everything. Cool. All right. Wonderful. Now, okay, now, we actually have a vehicle
Yeah.
that we've been messing around with. It's actually an employee here at Wells that happened to have a TPS problem.
Yeah, it worked out nicely.
It worked out very sweet. They don't always work out like that, but this one did. And so we got that vehicle here, and it is an '08 LaCrosse, correct?
Right, yep.
Okay, so we got an '08 LaCrosse here, and the problem that he was having, he was getting the tire pressure light for the right front, is that
Right,
correct?
yep, and it actually said on his dash, service tire pressure sensor.
Oh,
It was actually coming
so
up
it was
with a
calling
fault.
out that the sensor was bad.
Yeah.
Which we know isn't necessarily the truth.
Right, it could have been that it wasn't programmed properly or something like that.
Or something in the receiving module.
Right,
Or a
exactly.
connection in the receiving module that something,
Yeah.
you know, it's all part of the system. It should say there's something wrong in the system and it's pertaining to the right front tire.
Well, just
Yeah.
like an oxygen sensor code or something.
Right.
It's an oxygen sensor code, but it's something with the system.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, exactly right. Okay, so what did we do first?
Well, first of all, I went and I actually just hooked up my scan tool and verified that the only problem we were having was a right front. So it came up with a code in there for a right front signal frequency error.
Okay, good.
So then went and took our programmer here, and I just went around to all the wheels to see if it would respond. And when I got to the right front, I noticed it wouldn't respond as quickly as the other ones, and at some points it actually wasn't responding at all. The sensor was actually acting up intermittently for him.
Okay, so it appeared there was something going on
Something,
with
yep.
this particular sensor
Exactly.
because nothing else in the system is communicating with you other than this sensor,
Right,
correct?
yep.
Okay, so, and we weren't getting the same response that we're getting out of the other three wheels.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually we went ahead and changed out to a new sensor, and we have the old sensor right here, so why don't we just go ahead and
Yeah.
test this thing.
Let's go up to the jib.
So all we gotta do now, we just turn our tool on,
Okay.
and we gotta select here what kind of vehicle we have. So this is a Buick, so we'll select B for Buick, scroll down to Buick.
It's got the whole alphabet in there.
Yeah, yep. We'll go ahead and go to LaCrosse. We have a 2008. And we're going to go ahead and hit diagnose sensor.
Okay.
So this thing should beep once it picks our sensor up, and
Nice.
it did right away.
Yep. Okay, I can see what we got on our screen here. Let's
Yep.
bring that close-up of that.
There
There
we
we
go.
go. Perfect.
So,
Okay, so it tells us we're working on a LaCrosse, and we have the identification number in there.
Yep,
And now those identification numbers aren't always the same.
right. This one happens to be 10 digits. I've seen them 8 digits. Sometimes they have letters in them.
Yep, okay, so you just got to get familiar with the manufacturer's way of doing it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
hopefully they don't change.
Well,
Well, you never know.
Who knows?
All right, so then we have the temperature up there, it's 69 degrees. And let's go to the front camera. And we also have 315 megahertz
Yep.
that we saw. And also the battery says okay.
That's what it says,
And
yep.
0.1 PSI, but we know we have issues with this sensor.
right, yeah, maybe the
Okay.
radio frequency is intermittently not
Yeah.
right. Or
Who knows? You know,
Yeah.
things break after a while.
Exactly.
Plus this thing is spinning around, and let me throw you in a tire and see what happens.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Did that to a cat in a dryer once. No, I'm
Jeez.
just kidding.
Anyways.
But okay, so we got really good information
Yeah.
just by reading the
Yeah,
sensor.
that's-
Really cool stuff.
That's like everything we need to know.
Right. So now we know the sensor's bad.
Mm-hmm.
We want a new sensor to put into the tire
Right.
that communicates correctly with the car.
Yeah, we don't want that light coming on anymore.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a new sensor in
Yep.
here. And
So-
why don't you go ahead and explain that?
We'll go over to the kit here and we'll find our 315 megahertz sensor. It happens
Right.
to be the gray one here.
Yep.
And all you got to do is put it into that sensor cradle on the tool, lock it in, and if you want to go on the overhead camera here, so we just lock it into our cradle here,
Yep.
and we'll actually go back and we'll go ahead and go to new sensor. And being that we're able to communicate with the sensor right now, we're going to go ahead and select auto duplicate. It's going to electronically read the sensor again, pulls up our serial number, that 165 number.
Right. That's the one. Yep.
So then we'll go ahead and hit program. It's going to erase whatever sensor information was in this sensor if it was previously programmed.
Well, that's
or
nice. So
something.
these sensors can actually be
Possibly,
used in
yeah.
a car, taken out, and put into a different car, right?
That's, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So we got program successful. It rewrote the ID to 165
Nice.
number. So
Okay, great. Let's go to the front camera again. So if we're working on a car, right, we go up to it, and this sensor here was able to communicate.
Yep.
We got all identification number. Before we even pull that wheel off the car, we got the sensor made for it.
Exactly.
And we pull the wheel off, pop
Yep.
the new sensor in.
Put our new valve stem, attach it to our sensor,
Very
and
cool. And torque it down.
Yeah,
We're done.
pop that
okay,
new
that's pretty
sensor
cool
in there.
stuff. All right, now let's say we do not communicate.
right.
What then?
Well, then we would have to manually duplicate. So in order to do that, you would have to already have broken down the tire, and then you would actually look on the sensor if you want to bring up those pictures. If you
Very
can see on those sensors, like the one I'm holding in my hand right now is the one on the bottom.
Right.
You see all those little numbers on there. Those are the serial numbers of the sensors. Those are the
Right.
numbers that the programmer is actually reading.
Okay.
There's an option to manually duplicate on here. So you would go to that and you would input the ID number. You would type in.
You'd actually manually
those
put that
numbers.
number in.
Exactly.
Okay. So they have all 26 numbers in here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a joke. I'm kidding. All right. Let's see. That's perfect. So now I noticed too on those pictures that that number can be in a number of different any
Yeah.
place on the
Yeah.
sensor, and then how do we know which one is right? There's a bunch of numbers on
There is, and what's cool about this tool that we have here is there's actually an option in there to give the location, the OEID
Very good.
locator. So
I like
it'll
that.
point you in the direction.
So yeah, it'll put you near the location where it
Exactly,
should
yep.
be. So then if you have a number in here, and let's say you punch in the wrong one, what happens?
It'll come up unsuccessful
Right.
or not applicable or something like that.
Knock, knock. Hey, that's the wrong number, right?
Try again.
Yeah, try again. Pick a different one. Okay.
So what's
Very good.
actually really cool about being able to program our sensor ahead of time, the car doesn't really know then that we changed out the sensor.
Oh,
So
very
we
cool.
don't have to go in to the car's end and program anything on there because we've already put a sensor in
Theoretically,
that
you shouldn't have to.
will communicate. Right.
So, okay, very good.
So
Nice stuff. All right.
So
well, are
actually-
you ready to go in the car and show?
actually, before we get there, I just
Okay.
wanted to talk a little bit more about what was going on with our Buick.
Oh yeah.
So when we went ahead and put our sensor in that right front wheel, we programmed it up, took our old one out, put the new one in, and drove it around a little bit, got it back to the shop here, went ahead and just before I shut that key off, I noticed the light came up, and it said 0 PSI in the right front tire.
Oh, that's not a good thing.
That's not good. So, okay, so I thought maybe we have a computer issue or something with that receiver module or something like that. So went ahead, took my scan tool, hooked it up, looked for codes, and there were no codes in it. So
Okay.
thought that was kind of weird. So I went ahead, started it back up, shut it off a few times, and it didn't come back on at all. So, so we kind of let it go for a day, and then tried it again the next day, and it came up again, right front, 0 PSI. Went and looked at the tire, it definitely didn't have 0 PSI, it was full. So like we do when we test coils and stuff, being that we know the location of this tire, we went ahead and put it to the rear. So since it's
Let's
been
see
in
if
the
it
rear,
reacts.
exactly. Let's see if it follows the sensor
Right.
or what's going on with the system.
Okay, good. So if it comes up right rear,
Then
we're very suspicious of that sensor. There's
Exactly.
something going on
Yep.
there. Our new sensor didn't work for some reason.
right, yep,
But if it comes up right front, we got something up with the system, the rest of the system. 'cause
Right.
We already eliminated that sensor.
yep.
Good stuff.
And when we went ahead and put that in the right rear, we had to take our programmer tool and tell the car where each tire was then, because technically
Right.
we rotated the
GM.
tires. Yep.
Yep, and that's what we're going to do again today, right? We're gonna
Exactly,
show 'em how to
yep.
do that. Anything else you want to add?
No, we're going to go over to the GM, our Buick, and to our Ford. We have a
yeah,
Ford
we
here
have two
too,
different-
so
Okay, let's get to it.
let's go do it.
We only got a half
Oh,
an hour. Let's
kinda
go.
need this along, huh?
we need that. All right.
Okay. So,
All right. So here's our Buick.
yeah, there's a good old Buick.
Okay, and this is the one, remember, this is the one that had a problem with the left front.
Right front, yep.
Or right front, I mean. Well,
Yeah.
I'm looking this way, right?
Yeah. So
Isn't
yeah,
that
right
what our
front.
customers say?
Right, yep.
Okay. The right front had a problem.
Yep.
So what had happened is we put a new sensor in here.
Right.
Right. And after originally starting it, we got a quick light,
Yeah, it came on for just a split
few
second.
second
Yep.
over for this. It could have been a reset or something like that. We
Right.
weren't sure. So what we did is we rotated the tire to the right rear.
Yep.
Right. And that way, if it's just like coils. If you have a bad coil, you move it to a different cylinder and see if it follows.
Exactly.
And that's what we're doing
Yep.
here.
Yep. So let's just make sure that sensor's still working.
Let's
make
go
sure.
take a look.
Let's. So we'll go ahead and turn our tool on here, and same thing. We got to go into B for Buick. Go to our LeSabre Lacrosse 2008, and I'm just gonna go ahead and hit diagnose sensor, and the tool beeps. So the sensor is responding. We're at 35.9 psi.
Okay, so that's working.
It seems to be working. 68 degrees. It's a 315 megahertz
If you remember the screen that we had on prior,
Yep.
it was exactly the same, except for now we have pressure and a little different temperature.
Right, and actually, being that I just brought up the 315 megahertz, that brings up one of the comments there. He's asking about how do we know which sensor,
Okay,
to install.
very good.
So I figure we just cover that now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the sensors are going to come in two different frequencies, depending on the vehicle, and the tool here actually tells us which frequency for that vehicle.
Right.
Either
And you can also
315
find that information in all data.
Right.
And there's a spot in here that you can find that
Yep,
also.
exactly. So they come in 315 megahertz or 433 megahertz. And then they also come in, the sensors that we have come with either a black stem aluminum, silver stem aluminum, or rubber. So that's just the differences in the sensors. But the main difference is the frequency in which they respond.
Right, right. And that's mainly what you want to look for.
Yep.
And if you do, just pull up that sensor. It'll tell you on here
Yep,
what
exactly.
the frequency is
Yep.
too. So that's what you want to look for. A great question, by the way. All right, what are you going to do? Go around and
All right, so like say we did a rotate on here or something, we
Okay.
want to relearn the position of the tire. So when the car tells us the left front's low, it's actually the left front tire that's actually
Okay.
low. So what I went ahead and did was I turned the key on in there with the GM here with our Buick. You turn the key on.
No,
and then,
there's multiple different ways of doing this.
Yep.
So you have to look it up. You have to
Yeah.
look up the procedure. Don't assume you know the procedure.
Right, yep. This one I happen
Year
to look
to
up.
year, it can change.
It can, yeah. It can change model to model, year
Right.
to year, everything. Everything's different. The Ford is actually quite a bit harder than
We'll
this
get
one.
into that in a second.
But this one, with the key on, I get the key fob here and hold down the lock unlock buttons for like 3 seconds. We get the two beeps.
There it
The
is.
two beeps there are telling us that we're now in
We're
learn
ready to
mode.
go. And you do have a time limit here.
Right, yeah. If we don't get it in about 2 minutes, if we don't make it around, then the timer will time out and it'll beep saying it didn't complete.
Right. Okay. So while you're doing that, I'm going to address this other question here. And thank you for these questions, by the way. And first of all, Mob City. Yes, you got it right. It is a light emitting diode, an LED. Very good. I know I said your name wrong last time. I apologize for that, but here you go. All right, bring up my email address if you would, please, Glenn. And you send me an email with your mailing address. I need that again, and the size T-shirt you want. Remember, we have toddler size too, and I still, you got to send me a selfie with this T-shirt on yet too, Mob City. All right, thank you. And thanks for joining us again too, I appreciate that. Now we do have another question here somewhere. So you need a scan tool to service TPMS system.
Oh, yes,
with
another
all
question.
the sensors on the table. Okay.
Right.
So you need a scan tool. And
On some of them.
on some of them, it depends upon what you're going to do.
Right.
Now, if you have a programmer like this, you can get through just about everything, every 95% of vehicles with a programmer like this. And you may need a scan tool then, though, to set position.
Right.
Okay.
Or to learn the IDs.
Or to get in
into the
and
module
and
itself.
communicate with it.
Yep.
But your present scan tool should be able to do that. And a programmer like this is a great complement to that scan
Right,
tool.
exactly.
Is the way I view it. So there you go. Don't go out and buy a $2,000 one. You can get one for much less than that.
Yeah.
They'll do everything that you need it to.
Yeah, and then Dennis did have a question on there. It's can't see it on our screen, but he
Okay.
asked about how you mentioned that you didn't think that the TPMS was exactly necessary, but it was federally mandated.
Yes.
So he just wanted to.
And that's a real good
clarification
point
there.
too. Since what was it, 2008?
Right.
Every vehicle that is sold in the United States must have an operating TPMS system on it. But there is nothing that says 7 years from then or 10 years from then do you have to have an operating system, unless you work or live in an area where they do inspections on vehicles.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
California, that can be different. Washington too, I believe, is different, where they actually do inspections on the vehicle. So when you come in for your emissions test, if you have that TPMS light on there, you will have a problem, and you have to correct that.
Yep.
Okay, so, but for others that are, let's say you have a 10-year-old vehicle that has a TPMS on it, are you going to put that kind of money back into it if you need 4 sensors, that kind of thing? That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Is, is the public actually going to have this done? And I think, safety-wise, it's the smartest thing to have.
Oh, yeah.
Smartest thing to do.
It is a
because
safety feature.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it is also an emissions feature.
Right.
Because if your tires do get low, your emissions go up higher. And that's the main, from the government mandate, that's the main idea behind that, is to keep the emissions down. But it is a safety factor.
Yep.
For sure. All right, if it was my mother's car, if it was my wife's car, if it was my sister's car, it would be fixed.
Right.
Okay, it would be repaired to work properly. Does it absolutely have to be if you're not in an emissions testing area? No. If you're okay with the light on, you don't have to do it. We've survived 100 years driving cars without it.
Right.
That's the point.
Just personal preference.
Personal
really.
preference is what it comes down to,
Yep.
depending upon where you're located.
Right.
All right, let's go do this Ford.
All right, let's get to our Explorer here. You want to pull the email down off the screen just so we can see? And actually, if we go back to the main camera here, this Explorer was kind of hard to figure out.
Okay.
It's a lot more difficult than that one, so I went ahead and printed off the instructions.
And you guys should be doing that. Wait till you see the steps he has to go through. You'll see why
So
it's
I'll walk you
printed.
guys through it, and I'm actually going to read it right off of here.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn my ignition switch to the on position, turn it back to the off position, press the brake pedal one time, cycle the ignition switch off to on, off, on, off, on, press the brake pedal, turn the ignition switch off, on, off, on, off, on,
And there you go.
and there we go. Now
got-
we're in learn mode.
You get the beep when you know you've done it right.
Right.
Okay.
So got to go through our tool now and set our tool up for a Ford.
And by the way, while he's doing that, you should always print off these procedures and take it to the car with you. Remember, we've talked about, okay, what do you do when a problem vehicle comes in? The first thing you want to do is go to your computer. That's your tool, right? To learn how this system works, what's going on. And while you're there, print that off so you can come back. You don't have to be bouncing back and forth.
Gather all your information first.
Gather your information first and before you get to the vehicle.
All right.
Know what you're going to do before you get there.
Yeah. Let's get down to our tire here before our truck time's out.
Okay.
So most cars, like our Buick over there, we would hold the tool close to the valve stem because that's where it's going to pick it up.
Right.
On this Ford here, though, we have a band style sensor.
Right.
That sensor's mounted 180 degrees off of where the valve stem sits. There's no sensor right here. So we're actually going to hold the tool down here, hit diagnose sensor, and it picked it up.
And that's a good point, as far as where to pick that up from, because when a battery gets weak, okay, you may be trying to check it by the valve stem
Right.
and get absolutely nothing. But if you have a band sensor, go 180 around, and many times you can pick it up, and that way you can get the information off that sensor, and you can clone it a lot easier.
Yep. And actually, if I held this near the valve stem, it would probably read it because these sensors are good.
Right.
So read this one, and it should beep.
Oop, maybe it went too long.
Maybe.
Yep.
All right. All right, that's all good. Now on the Ford here, it doesn't do a double beep at the end to let us know that it worked.
Okay.
It will just say on the dash here that it worked.
Oh,
And
so you
it'll-
actually have to go in the vehicle and make sure.
Right, and it'll say training complete.
Okay.
If it's not done right, when you go to turn the ignition key off, it'll double beep then,
Okay.
saying that you didn't do it right, that you're gonna have to do it again.
So you may have waited too long, or do we have a sign
Possibly.
on the dash?
Yep, it still says train left rear tire. So for whatever reason, right now, this one's not working right.
Okay. Maybe you just waited too long.
Possibly.
Okay, well, why don't you turn the key off?
Yep. So now when we turn the key off, it'll most likely double beep.
There.
There.
So when you hear that double beep, you have to go over and do it again.
Right.
All right, we're not going to do it again here.
And
but
actually, he's been saying that he has a tire light coming on intermittently, so maybe there is a problem
maybe
with that
there's
left
an
rear
issue
sensor.
going on with that. We'll have to look into that a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Very good. All right, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that sums it up.
Okay.
Everyone's a little bit different, so I always go in and look and find out exactly how each
Okay,
system
let's
works
make sure
each
we got all the
time.
questions here. On some vehicles, letting some air out of the tire can do, there
Ah,
you go. Why
that's
don't you
a-
address that?
That's a good point too.
That is a
On,
good point.
I know on this one for sure, on our Buick for sure, if you were to go around and release something like 10% of the air, 5 to 10 psi, something like that, while it's in learn mode, if you were to release the air pressure, it would actually learn that sensor to that location.
Okay.
In a shop setting, for a guy to go ahead and drop 10 psi in each tire and then go back around, fill it back up,
Right, there's
would
a
have
lot of
taken
time wasted there.
triple the amount of time
But it's a
of the
good
tool.
point. You know, if you're in a tough spot, you can do that.
Right,
Right?
exactly.
And what if the guy on the other end of the shop has the programmer and,
Yep.
and you got to get this car out?
Yep,
It's
or
a
if you're
very good
doing it
point.
at
Who
home.
sent that in? Ah, Mob Kitty. Mob Kitty did it. Okay, very good, very good. That is a great point, and thanks for sending it in. We do appreciate that. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, I think we answered all the questions. We're all set to go.
Yeah.
Thank you for being there. Without you being there, we would not be here. We do appreciate it, and we'll see you again next time in the Wells Tech Garage.
See you guys
All right.
then.